And they believed a man who they exalted, a man named Samhain, a strange guy who was a self-proclaimed Lord of the dead. And he said this. He said a good person, if they die, they go to heaven. But a bad person, their soul has to indwell an animal on this earth. If you're good enough, you go to heaven. If you're too bad, you stay here and you get inside of an animal. And they believe this. And guess what? The favorite animal of the Druids who had died and were bad, those that had to indwell the animals, you know what the favorite animal was to indwell? A black cat. They loved cats. The second favorite were goats. Interesting. Goats and black cats. So the Druids, they would look at these animals that were about with different kind of perspective than you and I might look at an animal. They might look at a black cat and think, that's Uncle Harry. You know, they didn't know who you know the animals might be, really. You know, the goats and the cats, though, they could pretty well assume were used up by relatives or friends, you know, or whatever. And they believed this. Now, they would have to stay in these animals until the Lord of the dead released them to go to paradise. And so they would stay locked up in these animals all year except for one day a year. And that one day a year, you see, was October 31st, when they could be released from the animals that they indwelt. Now, this is just history, folks. It's not, you know, I'm not making this stuff up. And so these souls were sentenced to live in these animals, and this one night they could be out. They could be released. And what they would do, according to the legend, was they would float between the moon and the earth. These souls, if you would, that were released from the animals, you see. And the animals, when they were freed from this indwelling person that was there in them, they would be glad to be rid of them. And if they sensed a spirit nearby, they would freak out. So there was, of course, along with this legend, anytime a black cat would hunch up and hiss, you know, they figured that, hey, there was a spirit nearby. And thus you have the black cat with its hair raised and all the rest. Now, it gets better. These animals were, you know, freaking out all over town at night, you see. And these spirits would fly through the air. Thus we get the ghosts flying and the witches on broomsticks and all that stuff. Those were all the legends. And not wanting these spirits to bother them, the people of the towns, the Druids, would build huge bonfires because they believed that the spirits didn't like the light. Interesting. They didn't like the light, so they would stay clear from the bonfires and then make these big bonfires and hang around, you see. And the spirits obviously were bad people anyway, but being locked up in animals, they figured they were probably mean and angry and would do bad things to people if they ran across them. So, again, we get this idea, you see, that permeates the whole thing with Halloween. Now, the people would take animals that had been released, and this is where it gets kind of gross. They would take the animals that had been released and they would sacrifice them, kill them, and they would throw their entrails and the meat into the big bonfire. And then the people would dress up in the skins of the animals. They would put the goats and the cats and the animals, whatever they might be, whatever they believed to be, indwelt, freed from that indwelling spirit, they would put them on. Why? So that they could convince the spirits that they could identify with them, that they felt bad for them, and that they were identifying with them. See, look, we can wear these too. That's where this all came from, dressing up in these costumes, if you would, that had been sacrificed animals. Kind of a messy deal, kind of a sick deal. And so, not only that, but the worst of it is that they would also sacrifice babies to send other relatives into the realm of the dead to try and appease these spirits because they were afraid of them and what they might do to them. And sometimes kids were offered up to try and deal with these spirits.